I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order, the Saline City Council work meeting to discuss the budget, or components of the budget, as well as a water and sewer study and those results. Members present this evening are myself, Mayor Marl, as well as council members Seo, Dillon, Gearbaugh, McClellan, Mitchell, and Mayor Pro Tem Tahar. From city staff, we have City Manager Campbell, Clerk Royal, Treasurer Bennett, Deputy Treasurer McDonough will be joining us momentarily, as well as DPW Director Fordyce. The rest of you who are in the audience this evening, if you'd be so kind to sign in the back to my left, we would appreciate that. At this time, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted unless there are amendments. So as submitted, Ms. Dillon? Yes. Thank you, ma'am. And that was seconded by Councilwoman McClellan. Thank you. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of approving the agenda as submitted signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. We move on to the discussion portion of our agenda. First up is the FY18 budget. Ms. Bennett, do you want to make any initial remarks before we proceed to talking about Saline Main Street? No? Okay. Well, as you recall from the last meeting, I believe that the Main Street Board Chair, Jill Durnan, and the Managing Director, Riley Hollenbaugh, are in Pittsburgh. Is that correct, for a national Main Street conference? But in their place, we do have board members Rebecca Schneider and Karen Ragland. Ladies, we appreciate you being here this evening. Why don't we do this? Ms. Bennett and Ms. McDonough, do you mind scooting over a bit to my right? And Rebecca and Karen, why don't you join us at the table? If you wouldn't mind pulling up a chair. Thank you, Joanne. Thank you. And ladies, again, we appreciate you being here. Riley and or Jill presented on behalf of Main Street, I believe, at 2 meetings now, but we would welcome any additional remarks that you have to share.
I did want to quickly review our presentation so far because it has been so disjointed. It wasn't optimal in how we planned things, but first we played the video highlighting our accomplishments and providing testimonials of how the community supports our program. And then in the next meeting, Jill and Riley came and kind of gave you more facts and figures about why it's important that we continue our partnership. And Karen and I are here to answer your questions tonight. But one of the questions that I wanted to just quickly have you think about, because it's when I think about if I was in your shoes, I would want to know what is the return on investment for the money that we are receiving from the city. And one of the prime examples of the return on investment that you are making is our volunteer manpower. The first program that I think about that with is the Be Bloom and Flower program. Previously, the city paid a downtown director, Art Trapp, to manage that program. And the city paid for the flowers and the watering of the flowers. Right now, you're paying for the flowers, and I'm managing the program as a volunteer. So that means I'm marketing the program, Saline Main Street's marketing the program, ordering the plaques, assigning the plaques, putting up the plaques, sending the thank you notes, and all that stuff. So that is a city service that you are getting for free from our volunteers. Another program that is similar to this is the Summer Music Series. Previously, the city paid Art Trapp to manage the Summer Music Series and paid for the entertainment. Now the city pays for the entertainment. We get reimbursed through it, but Jill Durnan is the one who is booking the entertainment. She's the one setting up the chairs, closing the streets. We have usually about 4 volunteers every Thursday who contribute hours of their time. And she's also checking the weather forecast to make sure we don't have to move somewhere. So you can see that if this was a program that the city was paying the whole bill for, it would cost a lot more than just the entertainment. Another example of our volunteer manpower is our recent Clean Saline, where we had 50 volunteers who volunteered for 5 hours in downtown Saline. We get to reimburse volunteer hours at $25 an hour. So that was a $5,000 contribution to the city, which was leveraged through our volunteer manpower. One of the things that, other things that we offer is we raise sponsorship dollars. So your contributions are made bigger because we exist. We leverage volunteer or contributions throughout the community from our corporate sponsorships. And finally, there's this great intangible benefit that we have created more support for our downtown. People are more aware of our downtown, there's more buy-in, people want to be involved with growing and improving our downtown. And so Saline Main Street has made this possible, and you can't really put a dollar amount on that. I can't tie a dollar amount to everything that you give, but this is a great contribution to our community that Saline Main Street makes. Todd had indicated in an earlier meeting that the funding that we used to get our money from, that pile of money has dried up. But the need for the programs that Saline Main Streets provide has not dried up. We are the only organization that provides investment into our downtown and is focused on our downtown. We're not asking for any more money than we received in the past. We just want to continue to do what we've been doing, and we hope you will look favorably on our request.
Thank you, Rebecca. Karen, do you have any remarks you'd like to share? She most certainly did. Well, actually, let me begin by agreeing with Mrs. Schneider that regrettably, because of our meeting schedule, our conversation and dialogue about our support for Main Street has been a bit disjointed. And so I just want to make sure we're all on the same page before I go around the table for questions and also to begin discussion and hopefully develop consensus on this issue. Ms. Bennett or Ms. McDonough, do you want to go over again what we have provided for Saline Main Street in the draft budget, and then also maybe to enumerate specifically some of the in-kind support you're also recommending?
Do you have the in-kind numbers, Todd?
Or Todd?
Because I know that you, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be on the spot.
So, well, the in-kind is
Please.
So in-kind is printing of the monthly board packets, and then, of course, as you would suspect, most likely, I guess, that we had more in-kind contributions like DPW assistance and that type of thing earlier on in the first couple of years, and as they've gotten more efficient as the volunteers and such, to Rebecca's point about how putting out the barricades and such for the summer music series, we've lessened some of that in-kind support. I believe there were some significant dollars in-kind in the first year. It wasn't all utilized, wasn't all realized, but I think it was from around $15,000 to $20,000 in that first of the 5-year agreement. And again, as I said, as they continued on, it got less. Just for some totals, in 2012, we had $4,790, and these are the various events in the Summer Music Series, Winterfest, Oktoberfest, Student Art Banners, the Leather Bucket Alley, the Hoedown, the Macedon Mayhem Run, and the Flowers Planters Hanging Baskets. So in some years, like for instance, Oktoberfest, every year there's dollars, and others that maybe it was 1 or 2 years, and then it's been reduced or zeroed out altogether for subsequent years. So 2012, we saw in-kind to these events $4,790 and change. 2013, $6,348 and change. 2014, $2,558 and change. 2015, $3,363 and change. In 2016, $775. And then in addition to that, there was about a little over $600 a year in printing costs. Like I mentioned, we do the monthly board meeting packets. Riley comes over, and that's the paper, as well as, of course, the toner and the wear and tear, all that. Those we fill is basically our cost for our copiers and printers. So total in-kind over the 5 years of just under $21,000. that's for the events as well as the copying service. That's kind of where the in-kind costs have come out. But like I said, to Rebecca's point about the volunteers and trying to reduce that as much as possible, it's been a very good partnership.
So for a review of what's in the proposed draft budget is a general fund contribution going directly to Saline Main Street of $20,000, $30,000 coming from the TIFA budget going towards Main Street for Christmas decorations, and $5,000 for the flower baskets, which is a total of $55,000 that the city would be supporting. That's just the financial contribution. The in-kind services would all still be there as well, but there would be a $55,000 contribution from city funds, a combination of TIFA funds and general fund, going to the Main Street at $55,000.
And the cost for the Christmas holiday decorations, we're incurring those once, correct?
Well, potentially, I mean, depending on, you know,
Depending on how much you can get for $30,000, and then if we need to do more next year, that, you know, if the TIFA funds are available, we would include that, you know, in other years too. Part of the TIFA redevelopment plan that you may recall we did earlier this year or last year. All these days are coming together.
it's been
But
a
when
while,
we
yeah.
when we redid the TIFA plan, we included beautification down in the downtown for Main Street also. So part of our general fund budget goes to the maintenance of the parking lots up there. That doesn't go to Main Street, the city incurs those, and that could also be coming from the TIFA budget. So then maybe there could be some more that we could send up directly for Main Street support out of the general fund going forward.
Okay. Pardon me if I'm being obtuse here. Explain to me, and maybe this is a question for, I don't know who this is a question for, but hopefully somebody can address it. The rationale behind new Christmas holiday decorations is because the existing ones are old, dated, falling apart.
All of the above.
Okay.
Can't be used anymore.
A number of the pieces that have electrical lighting in them, they're too old and frayed and not worth repairing. And the rest of them are just really shabby. And the mounting hardware for the wreaths, which are the best thing we have, is not currently compatible with what we have on poles. We could reinstall them if we wanted to, but they're 30 plus years old. Yeah, they're all dated and frayed. Yeah.
So I have spent some significant amount of time working with Roger Sweats, who helped us rewrite our TIFA plan, going over the different parts of the Main Street budget that we could directly use TIFA dollars that we capture for. And for those, just as a real quick reminder, the TIFA is established by collecting 40% of all of the tax base for all of the units. So not only the city portion, but we are collecting the school portion, or not the school, the county portion, the library portion. We're collecting that, and as long as we have plan-approved projects, then we can use those dollars. So those other government agencies are also, you know, contributing to these. So we have went through and identified some other other things that we could do specifically out of what the Main Street budget does each year. And we've pretty much decided that if worded properly, we could use TIFA dollars to help fund Main Street with the different sign programs that they offer, the facade programs, and those things could be allocated as TIFA dollars as long as we had some sort of a legal agreement with the person that was receiving the funds. And we could also take care of the student banners, the installation, and the purchase and installation of both Christmas decorations and student banners, or any of those projects could come from the TIFA in addition. So, you know, looking at their budget that they submitted, or their plan overview, you know, if we could do the design portion of that is a good chunk of what we could sponsor out of the TIFA in addition to the contribution that you're making from the general fund. Now, this year, we've done a little bit more than what their design budget is because we know we had the extra cost for the decorations.
We actually don't have those in our budget.
Right.
But that's a project the design team is assisting.
Yes, we're assisting with it, but we did not ask
Right,
the city
correct,
for the money.
correct, right.
But you're getting it.
Right.
Ms. Bennett, anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think I've confused you.
Okay, I don't know about that. Ladies, Rebecca, Karen, anything you'd like to add at this point?
Just,
Karen, if you wouldn't mind speaking into the microphone, because we're recording this. Thank you.
okay, just again, you know, the budget, our budget is based on projects or work plans we have in place. The decoration, I believe, is a new work plan, so it is not reflected in our budget, but as Rebecca said, we do plan to assist with that. But I wouldn't want it considered as what we have in our budget, what we're asking for, because it currently is not one of the line items.
Sure. Okay. Let's do this. Let's work our way around the dais. I'll start with Mayor Pro Tem Tahar, end with Councilmember Seal. If there are questions for staff or for our guests relating to a contribution to Main Street, I will entertain those. When our questions are exhausted, I'll begin a discussion, and hopefully we can develop consensus on how best to move forward, whether the consensus is to adopt what staff is recommending or to deviate slightly from that proposal. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Ms. Tahar, and yes, please make sure you speak into the microphone.
Thank you. And thanks for that. It's good to have a coherent presentation all at one time. Thank you very much. And I appreciate the fact that we were able to put this first on the agenda tonight instead of last. So a couple of questions. So I think at our last work meeting, Ms. Mitchell suggested that we might defer all or part of the purchase of Christmas decorations to free up TIFA funds to be used in another way to support Main Street. Some kind of, well, I think of it as a shell game, but the kind of thing that Ms. Bennett was talking about, that some things that are not currently covered by TIFA funds could be, that would free up general fund money, or possibly the kind of TIFA support that directly for some of the for Main Street projects. So I'm just wondering what you think about the possibility, or what we all think about the possibility of deferring some or all of the Christmas decoration purchase.
Can I just caution on that? Because
Make sure you get the mic.
karaoke. To use the TIFA dollars, we have to have them for a plan specific. So just because we say we're going to do the 30,000, we're not going to put them for Christmas decorations. If what we want to allocate that 30 is not included in that TIFA plan, we can't use those funds. The TIFA plan is very specific as to what projects are included in what is funded. And that's why with some of these things, we have to be careful on how we address it. And that's why trying to give them the support they need, we've been trying to allocate what projects could come out of the TIFA budget. So if you take out the $30,000 for Christmas decorations, that $30,000 coming from TIFA has to go to in one of those plan-specific work projects.
Okay, thank you.
This is a caution.
No, well, no, that exactly, in fact, answers what my underlying question was. I understand that it's you know, it's not a simple thing. And then my second question is, in looking at the budget that we got, not this one, but the previous document we got, I notice rent and utilities is it's an expense. Is there any possibility that the Main Street office could relocate, say, to City Hall for less rent, and thereby free up? I mean, Dutch person, counting pennies, shuffling things around. Has that been considered at all?
Yeah, we considered that quite a bit when Main Street was first launched. And it was decided at that time that it really wasn't a good fit if we wanted Main Street to be considered an independent organization. Currently, a big chunk of our funding is coming through Oktoberfest and the sponsorships. And most of our sponsorships are being given to us because they're getting something back in return, which is, the advertising at all of our events. I'm not sure that if we were considered a city entity, because I think if we're under this roof, that there might be some perception that we're a city entity, that we would still get the same support, both from our sponsorships and our volunteer base. So it's kind of, I think we might be treading into troubled waters there.
We have been working to find a lower cost place to reside. And that may happen soon.
Well, okay, I looked at the amount, and it did not seem exorbitant. It seemed quite reasonable, actually, but if there's something even more reasonable, that would be great.
Thank you, Ms. McClung.
I don't really have any questions, but I just wanted to know if you would speak a little bit to the kind of the projects that are coming up that haven't previously been seen. So like the art around Saline and some of the other things that work plans that are going on. And I mean, I fully support Main Street and want to do whatever we can to continue to support you guys.
Sure, there are some other areas where I think you get a lot of return on investment, and one of those is the student art banner program. We're having new banners that should be up for Taste of Saline. We have partnered with the Arts and Cultural Commission to do the art around Saline, which is going to have 4 big installations on the sides of buildings. We are continuing our parking utilization study, which is something we've taken on to kind of work with area property owners around parking areas, specifically in the Key Bank area, to see if there's a better way we can do that. Do you have?
Almost, and that's a partnership with Beckett and Rader and Bill Kinley with Phoenix. There's also the pop-up store that we just did with the school. So some new schools, that's something that that was just a 2016 initiative. We hope to do more with them this year.
We also have a sign grant program that we are matching $500 contributions from local businesses who want to improve their outdoor signage on their buildings. And we do hope to eventually grow that into a facade improvement program as well.
Anything else, Ms. McClung? Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Dillon?
Thank you. As far as the student banner program, don't we sell those banners to the families? So if that's the case, can we not use TIFA money for that project?
We have, there was a year when we sold them and self-funded the next round. That next round did not get sold back to the families, so we don't have the revenue from that to do this round of banners.
Okay.
But we can sell the banners that are going up now to fund future years.
We didn't raise enough.
I guess,
I'm in charge of doing that. The program itself was designed to do that, so it's supposed to be a self-sufficient. The issue that we had with that was because Michigan Ave reconstruction happened, so there was a year that it didn't get done that way. So going forward, I think that's the plan, and I think it can become a self-sufficient thing down the road. But this year, it just, and the other issue that we have in banners, just in general, is that the current banners, if I'm correct, Jeff, the current banners don't fit on the poles. So there's no banner. Like, we have no banner. There's no summer music series to put up. There's no Celtic festival to put. Is that right, Jeff? Correct. Yeah. So we're kind of, I think, as a city, struggling to figure out what we're going to do for banners, because there isn't any, and most of these organizations that provide them don't realize that the old ones don't fit. So.
They may not have budgeted
Right.
for this year.
Right.
well, I guess my point is whether you sell them to families or you don't. If we're offering that as an option, I guess my question is to Mickey Jo, does that impact that we can use TIFA money for it if it's not a retained asset?
It specifically says for banners, it's to purchase banners and to install them.
But then if we turned around and we sold those banners, would, I guess I'm just trying to
I would have
figure.
get clarification. I'm not an attorney trying to
Okay.
decipher that. I'm
Right,
not
I mean,
gonna venture.
right, so, yes, we would need to confirm that, but the city, I mean, the city is contracting currently for the last 5 years, and hopefully going forward, is contracting with Main Street to provide services as well as projects and whatnot. So this would be part of our contract with them to provide that particular project, if you will, as they promote, as we contract with them to promote the downtown.
Right.
But sir, you have that's a good question. We will get that clarified.
Okay, yeah, I mean, the project itself, I have no question with. It's whether or not if we're going to sell those banners and not retain them, if there's an issue there.
Go to the next year's thing. It's like, it's not like you're selling them off to, you're just selling them off to get the next ones next year. It's like,
It's just.
you still having banners up,
It's still a capital investment
Right.
in my
Right.
opinion, so I think it would be fine.
Okay, the $30,000 that we keep throwing around on Christmas, do we have like what our anticipated full cost would be?
We don't. The design team is going to meet later this month with some vendors who, Joy Ely is chairing that initiative, and she's done a lot of research, and we're trying to figure out, even before we get a figure, we want to have a master plan of this is what we're going to ultimately buy, and then we can scale it back to, we'll do this year, and if we can get it done, we'll do more next year.
Okay,
We want to have a comprehensive plan and deal with a company who has products available year after year so that we are assured that we can grow it.
okay, I guess that was going to be my next thing, is I don't want to buy something that becomes obsolete and we can't back up to it. So, my other question is, what is the recommended contribution? What is the Main Street program's recommended contribution? What is their percentage that they ask be contributed? Yes.
I think
It's 30%
Of our own.
over your overall budget?
We are not asking for that, we're asking less than.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have for right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gearba. Ms. Mitchell, if you could make sure he gets the microphone.
Not really too many questions. Just one, could you explain again what the $5,000 for the baskets or planters, or what that exactly entails? I'm trying to figure which planters, because I know I helped sponsor the one planters, and I didn't know if this is something
Well,
else.
this year we are not getting the $5,000. So the program this year is solely being funded through sponsorships. In the future, we could use the $5,000 to purchase more baskets, is ultimately our goal, because we have not very many for as many places as we have to hang them.
Well, no, and I didn't know if this was for the Christmas baskets that we had like this year, or something different to continue
No,
that.
it's, with the irrigation system, the program costs a lot less money because we don't have to pay anybody to water flowers.
It's true. It's true about that one. Good.
Just for clarification, this year, meaning FY17 that they're in right now, I did say we have 5,000, but that's for FY18. We're talking our FY18 budget, so that 5,000 will go to them next year when we're getting the baskets up. Right now, they're doing FY17 baskets. I seen her.
Well, that's right. You guys have a calendar year versus a fiscal year. Got it. Got it.
So just keep that straight.
Yeah. No, and I just was wondering about the 5,000, if it was something else. I don't think anything else on that. I do know how we transitioned from, over the last 5 years, from, I believe, I can't remember what our total amount was, and we came down to about $20,000. My one concern, though, in terms of doing the facade grants and those type of things, is that issue of using taxpayer dollars and figuring out exactly how that would occur before we could substitute that out. I think the whole part of it would be, that would be a program that somehow I think would come through us as a tax incentive, something where you would just not do it, and somehow you would help coordinate with the city. I don't necessarily like the idea of transferring city tax dollars over to an organization to have them then spend it,
Right.
because that raises the question. So we would have to do it that same way.
Which is why the TIFA contributions are specified out. So it wouldn't be part of our Saline Main Street contribution. It would be Saline Main Street contribution for flower baskets. Or we're not just giving them $35,000. We are expecting them to be able to substantiate. This is how, because it has to tie back to that plan.
Right.
And that would be the same for any
of the TIFA dollars that go over there, we have to have plan specific. That's why each line item in the budget will be specifically stated, 30,000 for Christmas decorations, 5,000 for this, so that it's not just being handed over to an organization. You cannot do that.
Right, and that's what I thought. If we looked at something like that, we would end up doing kind of like a substitution where you would no longer do it, but the city maybe would do it. Because I think that was one of the things that we've looked at is in terms of facade improvements or other types of tax incentive that would help encourage that kind of redevelopment downtown if we needed to.
Well, that's according to Roger Sweats. That is exactly what the TIF is designed and set up to do.
Right.
But we have to have, the city has to have some control and interest in it, even if it's just an easement for the time that the work is being done.
Right. And I think that's a plan for moving forward in terms of how we would help free up the dollars that you already have for that type of thing, to set those aside, and we would use the money within the city. The only other issue I think I had was just to talk about the in-kind, which I think, even though we only had $775 last year, I think it'll go back up to what it typically is, around $3,000 or $4,000, don't you believe?
Well, it's actually come down each, so, but, yeah, so 2,000 to 3,000 probably.
Okay. Which I think is sufficient for us to continue to do that. I don't see a problem with the in-kind.
Thank you, Mr. Gearba. Ms. Mitchell?
Thank you. So I want to go back and make sure, the confusion is that we have different buckets of money, and certain buckets can pay for certain things and not others. So, exactly, right. So I've heard some amounts, and I want to make sure. So $20,000 would come out of our general fund, Ms. Bennett, is that right? Okay. And then an additional $10,000 would come from TIFA funds for specific.
30 from TIFA for Christmas decorations.
Okay.
5 for baskets.
Okay.
For a total of 55,000 between Main Street.
So I guess the confusion for me is when you were referring to this document, I'm sure it's me. It's not you, it's me.
No, I like to mumble things up.
So, well, then I guess.
This is just an example of future, how we could, how we
Okay.
could go forward.
But it wouldn't be in addition to the $20,000 number, the $30,000 for Christmas, or the $5,000 for flower baskets. Is that correct? Okay. So my thought is we're finally recovering in this city, and it's really nice. And we have a beautiful movie theater, and we've invested money on the east side of town. And we're seeing some exciting things coming to our downtown area with the cheese shop and the McPherson's, and we have the News, Art and Antiques, and this restaurant is coming in from Chelsea. And I think that Main Street efforts support those businesses. And it's my interest to fund a Main Street that can fully support it. I'm not sure that at the $20,000 general fund amount that is sustainable. It does not sound like it is. So what needs to happen that they could be fully funded to reflect parity with years past?
Well, I think formulate the answer. So as you may recall, we would have to cut something else out of the general fund budget, because when we presented the budget, it was closed by, what was it, 6,000?
Less than, so
Pardon?
it's 1,600 or 1,800.
Right. Oh, yeah, 1,800, sorry. So $1,800 is all we have additional in our general fund budget that I'd be happy to give them.
Right.
However, there's also other things that have came up in the course of the conversation. So we'd have to cut something else out of the general fund budget to be able to fund any more to that, or have some additional revenue that we may have not forecasted.
Okay. So it's that point at the decision tree. So if Main Street is not funded at a point that is sustainable, and if they have to change their operations or reduce their programs, is the city prepared to step in and continue those programs? Or how, would they just go away? What happens at that point?
Sure, well, the quick answer is, no, we are not. That's when we switched, when we made the move to support Main Street, we had a part-time downtown manager, and so that position went away. And certainly, I believe we all understand and see that Main Street does a fabulous job and provides tremendous quality for the community. But again, the challenge, right, is the dollars we have. But yes, no, we would have to do some significant revamping within the organization. Typically speaking, most of your budgets, 80 to 85% of your budgets are going to be people, right? And so, and that's no different with the city budget. And so, it would be significant to even go back to where we were. I mean, it wouldn't be a huge hit, but we'd have to look at staffing, and would that mean, again, there's no additional dollars to hire somebody. So how would we make that work? So yeah, there's no doubt. But so, we talked about, you may recall the very first budget work session we had, we are expecting some one-time dollars, right? Some significant one-time dollars, but again, those are one-time. And, typically rule of thumb is you try not to do long-term type of activities with one-time dollars. Because the other thing, which I think I can at least I'm certainly very supportive of a multi-year, and continuing another multi-year deal with Main Street. Certainly would make that recommendation. But again, to make it at $40,000 a year for 5 years, that's significant. And when you say, yes, we're turning around, but to give you some context in what we get as far as for the taxes, so Cypress Ridge, 27 homes, and out of this, if it's their homestead, right, they get the exemption, so they're paying about 44 mils or so, something like that. But 16.28 comes to the city, and so I believe average price is somewhere around $310,000. Taxable value is right around $155,000, which is about half, right, of the cash value. And so you're talking about a little over $2,500 per home times 20. That's about $68,000. So it's better than a stick in the eye, but it's not a windfall, right? Now we do have, but again, that's when it's built out completely, and so that's the difficulty is we have a handful of these infill housing developments that are certainly going to be positive contribute to our community, no doubt. But I also say it's having a primarily residential community is much more expensive than having one that has more commercial, industrial. It just is. The services, there's more services required, right? And so it's just difficult when going back to what I said, I think at the first meeting, that now it's all general fund dollars. This is just another very qualified, no doubt, group that or use, if you will, of general fund dollars, and it's competing, right? And so, and municipalities are always at least a year and a half to 2 years behind as the world goes, if you will, just because of taxes and when things are completed, and so it takes a while. So that's why it took us a couple years to get really the big backlash when the world fell apart financially. Because again, that's I guess a positive side of that. But So if that makes any sense.
So let me approach this from a different way then. If your thought is funding at this level for 5 years is not something we're comfortable doing, are we comfortable doing this for the next year? Fully funding Main Street for the next year?
Certainly not for a cop-out by any stretch of imagination, but, I mean, we can certainly provide you with some possibilities of where we would have to make reductions in the proposed draft of the budget. And then you all would make that determination if you had some other, you all may have some ideas of where you want to see those reductions. To make those, I mean, we can certainly propose some, but you all may have some ideas too, where you say, hey, now one question, Mickey Joe, do you know, again, things are tight and that's the world of being in municipal government, but we talked about utilizing TIFA dollars for maintaining the planter beds and such that we currently use general fund dollars for. I know that line item is about $8,000, but that also includes electricity and such. Do we know that?
We estimated about $5,000.
So that'd be $5,000 closer to the 40. So at that point,
We have to also keep in mind that our TIFA revenues are subject to, the personal property reimbursement from the state, which we have a worksheet that we did, but we continually fall underneath that. And we have other TIFA commitments that have been on the plan as well. So, doing some parking lot improvements and things like that is going to take our TIFA dollars down to $10,000. So if, for whatever reason, we don't get what we're supposed to get, something isn't going to get funded. I do not want to get in the habit of promising away TIFA monies and then not have them there.
Absolutely.
And-
Yeah, so this would be general fund, that what I'm hearing you say is it would be general fund. So,
Right.
It's
all budget, it's all,
right.
the best.
So my interest is in exploring what could be done. It seems like out of our budget, something could be done. And I also recognize that, I am the newest member of this council, and I humbly look forward to my peers' suggestions, but it's my wish that we fully support Main Street. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Seal, questions?
Thank you for clarifying the budget for me, and also for clarifying the fact that this doesn't fall within our balanced budget that we had previously. In other words, in order to achieve this, we would have to make other cuts. I guess I would withhold any, I think Main Street is a wonderful program. I think it does great things for the community, but I think we need to balance that against what we would have to do without to make this kind of a financial commitment. So that's what I would be waiting to see.
Any other questions at this time? Mr. Gearbaum, would like to give the microphone to Mr. Schultz.
Todd, real quick, can you clarify what we supported for 2016? The exact same amount that we're proposing in the budget right now?
20,400, I believe. Correct, 20,400.
Okay, so and then I see you're asking for 40,000 this year. What was the incremental cost increase of 19,600 now that you're asking for that additional funding, I guess?
Essentially, what we've done is worked with the original funds. The way I understand is Lee Burgoyne being the prior city, I guess, treasurer. So he helped Main Street and developed a program where it was, I think, 200,000 and change, and he divided it into 5 years, being front-end loaded. So what we did is just over the time is just develop the reserve. So we really, we haven't incurred that many more expenses. We have other things we like to do, but we haven't generated more expenses. So, and the money hits our books a little differently than yours, in that we're in the split year. So our budget goes from January to December, and yours goes from July to December. So sometimes the monies don't hit at the same period in the same calendar year. Which, for instance, a good example is you give us $12,000 $1,000 monthly support, and you've been very generous in giving us that as a lump sum. You know, in our budget, it hits us at 12,000 total, where it was indicated at 6 and 6, I think, in the EDC breakdown. So we've made due, Dean, with this, I'm going to say 20,000 is actually a little bit more hit our books this year, but because we've been so successful with fundraising and with volunteer hours, that's not guaranteed. I mean, we've been very, very successful at that, but, you know, we're working with volunteers and things change, so next year may not be as good a year. So, you know, and we also have a staff person now who is very competent, capable, and we'd like to make sure he stays around. We want to have the ability to give him raises so that our investment in him pays off. So.
And that was my question, because I know when being on TIFA all these many years, that the intent was to do exactly what you were saying, was that it was to peel down as year after year came, and that support would eventually be offset. But we knew that the city was going to always have to contribute something. Just never the contribution, from my perspective, was that we would be contributing $40,000 5 years later, that we would be contributing something like $20,000 or $25,000, which I would think would be some percentage of your budget, which I think would be a cost-sharing approach, 75-25 or something like that. That's why I wanted to understand what the request for $40,000 was, because from my perspective, I was seeing it was supposed to be doing something like this, and it sounds like we advanced a lot of money, and now we're at a point where there isn't enough money being generated to help offset that component. Thank you.
And we can do less.
Well, and that was my question. I was just trying to figure out from the facades and so forth, like that type of thing, looking at projects, but I see one of your big budget line items, of course, is a promotion, but that's, of course, the things associated with Oktoberfest and the other ones. Okay.
So another, another point I'd like to make is just, you know, this budget is based on raising money through sponsorships, raising money at Oktoberfest. Both of those are, you know, based on the community's success and whether they believe in us, which I believe. My gut tells me if the community views the city not being behind us 100%, then they would question our, you know, purpose for being. So that might change things. But so sponsorship and the Oktoberfest is a huge event, but it's revenue. So two main areas of our budget are totally dependent on outside forces that, you know, we don't know. So the city support is something that is guaranteed, that ensures our success no matter what happens with those two revenue sources.
From my perspective, it's a change in philosophy from what was originally proposed 5 years ago, so just needed to clarify that.
Yep, sure. All right, let's do this, because I'd like to start developing consensus on this issue, or at least try to this evening, because we do have to transition and talk about several other issues this evening at our work meeting. Let me start by saying this. As it relates to the TIFA contribution of in excess of $30,000 for new Christmas decorations? 30 for Christmas. I'm probably an outlier on that, but I realize it's not all about me. So if there's consensus to move forward and use those public funds in that manner, I mean, it is what it is. As it relates specifically to Saline Main Street, I don't think there's any doubt that it is a organization that has produced tangible results in recent years. I think the new signs of growth and life and activity we are seeing in our downtown are a direct result of their work. It has inspired a number of people to become more engaged and invested in our community, which is something that we should all be encouraging and all want to see. As far as a annual contribution from the general fund, I think my opinion probably mirrors that, at least to some extent, of Councilwoman Mitchell. There's a balancing act that has to be done here between the fact that we as a public entity have finite resources, but we also want to invest critically in areas that have an impact on our citizens' quality of life. And I think Rebecca's comments resonated with me early on when she said that if Main Street were to go away, someone's still going to have to incur these costs if we want these activities and events to continue. If we don't, then they just disappear. And I think that would be detrimental to the quality of life that we strive to maintain in the community, in the city specifically. So while 20,000 might not be sufficient, I'm not sure we can swing 40, but I'd be looking at a number somewhere in between. I could probably compromise at 30 or 28. And maybe we can sharpen our pencils and find a few areas to cut or to reduce within the budget. But I think in order for Main Street to continue to grow and mature and do the work that we want them to do, I'm not sure that 20,000 is sufficient in my judgment. So I would be looking to contribute more. But that's just my opinion. You may agree, you may not. Ms. Tahar, can I start with you?
Certainly, thank you.
And again with Mr. Seal.
Yes. Well, yes, of course. We want to support Main Street and all the great work it does. We also want to balance the budget and spend general funds responsibly, is the word I'm looking for. So I would also be in favor of funding Main Street at more than $20,000. I would like to see what we would then give up in other areas of the general fund budget to do that, and to be able to make that choice. And I think it would also be good to see, is there any of the activity, Ms. Bennett talked about things that could be projects that could be supported from TIFA funds in the future, that would then shift some of the cost. Can any of that be done still in their 2017 work plan?
Well, and you might be the person to ask this. In the general fund, Todd, whoever, our arts and culture budget, you have $3,000 in professional services, arts and culture, depending on where that's going to be. That might, that's going, if that's the same program that you're partnering with them. I don't know who's on arts and culture, or what this $3,000.
Tahar is the council rep, but both Tahar and the public servant.
But I don't know what those professional services that you have in here in the general fund. I mean, that might be $3,000 that is technically could be to the Main Street. Or paid from TIFA so that we could free up more for that.
No, I'm sorry. I am unfortunately not Joanne.
I can continue to look at that kind of stuff, but
Yes.
that, I mean, things like that.
So, yeah, well, and as we move into other items of discussion in this meeting, I have one small area that I have a suggestion for some funds that we might not spend this year that could go toward this, but it's not $10,000. So, but every little bit helps. So so yes, I mean, yes to, if at all possible, increasing our level of support, but also yes to a balanced budget.
And I will kind of second both of those comments from both Mayor Morrow and Ms. Terhar. But I think, and knowing Main Street as I do, that there's probably some flex in your budget as well. I mean, just looking at the banner project, which I'm chair of, that, that this year, yes, is 1,400, but going forward, there's room for that to be self-sustaining. So I think that as long as we can, I definitely want to see support from the city for multiple reasons, but mainly because of what you said, Karen, that, if the city's not going to show publicly that we're, backing it, then I think it would be really a struggle to have the private sector do the same. So, again, I would like to see a balanced budget as well. So kind of think going through with a sharp pencil and figuring out where we can make adjustments to bring that number up. And then again, on the Main Street side too, looking at realistically, like, can we do something with this? Can we do something with that? Then I think that's a good idea, so. That's it for me.
Ms. Gilliland, sorry.
That's okay. Thank you. I guess I had one question that was sort of a carryover that got sort of skipped in this process, which was, what is Main Street's overall plan to grow their revenue in the future? I mean, are you going to be looking to us for the same amount year after year after year? I mean, what are you bringing to the table?
I would start by saying, I don't think there's ever a plan, and it's not the Main Street model to not have city support.
No, but I think we were trying to find that happy sweet spot.
Yep.
And I think that's why, Michigan Main Street recommends, the National Main Street Law recommends 1/3 of the budget come from the city. We're not asking for that, we're asking for less, because we have created a model that allows us to raise revenue from our events and from sponsorships. But as I said, both of those are very, they're not guaranteed.
Right.
So, city support, and I can speak for myself, not necessarily Main Street, and you're only talking to one of the board members. But, Main Street just offers an amazing amount of energy to this community. And that sort of, as we said earlier, an intangible. From a funding standpoint, I think the city has to, be committed to that every year. What that amount is will depend on how much we can put forward. So if you said to us, hey, we're only going to give you $20,000, we just have to cut the budget. And cut some of the programs. I don't know if everyone here is aware of how Main Street works, that all of the budget comes out of work plans. So this summary document is actually a list of every single work plan we're doing, and then there's a budget attached to it. So are we planning to be self-sufficient? Just as Rebecca said, probably not.
Oh, I was not implying that you'd become a self-sufficient entity by any means. I was just looking to see where you were hoping to raise, where we could lower and find that happy medium.
Right, and, 30, we've got by with the 20.
Right.
But it's actually not just 20 for us this year. We're actually getting more because of when the funds hit our budget. So that, so if you look at our budget, you'll see it's more money. If you notice that.
Right.
But I don't know how successful Main Street would be. I don't know how we would change our model to be, deal with 20,000 every year.
Right.
I just don't know.
I don't know if there's, we always have plans to grow our sponsorships. We want to get more individual donors, people who can just give us $25 so there's more buy-in. But I don't know, can we come up with $20,000 in individual donor? Probably not.
No, that's, okay.
There are new businesses coming to town who we will hit off.
Right. No, that's fine. Okay, I just wanted to know if you actually had a plan for that and trying to raise, if you had a schedule.
I will say one more thing that I know the team is working on, but it's not solidified, is that, we've been working on transforming our strategies, what's the phrase? Transformation strategies. And that's more of a focus on economic impact. If that's the case, and we actually, are successful at doing that, we can actually go out and ask for corporate contributions that are not tied to events. Because right now we're in this, I'm going to call it a cycle, where we have to give something to get something. So we're doing that here, but we're also doing that with our corporate sponsors. If we could get to a level where we can convince the corporate community to support us without having to put on an event, that would give us more revenue.
Right.
That would be unencumbered by, activities.
Okay.
Maybe that's the possibility. But we're definitely not there yet this year, and probably not next year.
Okay. So I guess my stance on the budget would be that it's, money's like, wine and candy. Everybody wants more, more is generally better. But I cannot definitively say until we can see where there would be options to move money within the budget. I wouldn't want to commit to saying more. Yes, if we could fund more, I would be in favor of it, but it would be at what cost and finding that balance.
Mr. Gearbox?
Yeah, I think a couple things that have come up out of the discussion, and maybe something we have to think of in the future, is the potential of a DDA downtown, Downtown Development Authority. which would be a taxing entity, which would provide support. Of course, then you have to have the downtown property owners and merchants adopting that. So that would generate a recurring funds, potentially something. But again, that's another tax structure on top of this tax structure. So throwing that on the table for something to be considered in the future. I think there is a sweet spot in between there somewhere, so I'm okay with looking for something like that. I would like to look at recurring costs, something that we know is in the budget every year that can be subject to being reduced. And normally when I'm doing my budgets, either travel, conferences, or something of that nature. So I don't want to see us cutting anything that potentially is detrimental to repairs or updates or such to structures and things within the city.
I don't have anything further at this point.
Thank you, Dan.
I guess I'll stay by my original comments, and that is that in order to make a decision, well, let me ask this question first. Is the $20,000 that's being proposed, is that already in the balanced budget? That already is. So what we're talking about is beyond the $20,000. I see. All right. Well, the other thing that I find a challenge, at least for me, and I think I understand, but I'm not entirely sure that I do, is you say that you need to show the city support in order to garner the support from the outside community, outside the city. But yet you don't want to be seen as an entity of the city by moving into some city-owned facility to save the $12,000 a year rent that you have. That might be one place where some money could be gained in your budget that would add to the overall impact of what you have to deal with. And it wouldn't cost us any offsetting city service, I don't believe. There might be some additional expense for utilities or something, but maybe minimal if we could find space in the building somewhere. But again, overall, and I do appreciate, and I certainly think that the contribution that Main Street has made to the city, and hopefully will continue to make to the city, is beyond, I think it's wonderful. I know when I've gone to other cities and seen flower baskets and so on, I've thought that truly is a wonderful addition to the cityscape. When I've seen the excitement that you folks have generated with some of your downtown activities, I think that's wonderful. But in order to give you more money, I guess I'd have to understand first where that money is going to come from within our balanced budget before I can make a decision one way or the other. That's where I stand.
Thank you, Mr. Seal. So I'm hearing this. Ms. Bennett, Ms. McDonough, it appears, based on the consensus that's been developed around the table, that there is a desire to see if we can up the annual amount from our general fund. Probably not to $40,000, maybe somewhere in the neighborhood of $30,000 by cutting or reducing some existing line items within the budget. So if you could take a look at that and make some recommendations. I do think Mr. Gearbaugh's point is well taken, and I know it's not a lot of money, but I would be interested in this data, maybe looking back 4 or 5 years. How much have we as a collective group used out of our travel, our seminar, our conference budget? And is there ability maybe to reduce that and utilize some of those funds for Main Street? Council, city council. Well, I do all then. Yep. Well, I'm not suggesting we eliminate it. There's some really valuable conferences and seminars that I've gone to, but I have a hunch that we don't use it in its entirety. Say again? Usually you don't. Yeah, okay. Which leads me to my next question, my friends, after conferring with the city manager. So we've begun to make progress on funding Saline Main Street, although this dialogue and discussion will need to continue. There are other components of the budget that we need to discuss and be thoughtful about, but we will probably not be able to do that in the remaining 20 minutes. And I'm also cognizant of the fact that, where did you write that down? At our next council meeting, we have a work meeting scheduled at 6 p.m. to discuss some issues that really cannot be delayed any further. One will be a report from Mays Consulting about the rec center roof. One will be a bond refinancing for the and potentially a new bond for the rec center roof. I believe Roger Swets or Scott Smith will be discussing that with us. And depending on what the consensus is about tablets or laptops for council members, we would need to discuss a tablet/open meeting act policy with Scott Smith. So what I would like to suggest or propose, because again, the budget is perhaps I mean, it's a primary responsibility of city council to be very strategic and thoughtful. And so what I would like to do, we're going to get to some of these issues this evening, but I believe we're going to need an additional meeting to discuss our general operating budget. So I'm curious to see if people would be available for perhaps an hour or an hour and a half a week from today, which would be the second Monday of the month. The 8th.
I'll be out of town.
Ms. McDonough, could you fill in? Okay. Mr. Gearbaugh? Yeah? Ms. Mitchell? Mr. CO?
Yes.
Ms. Dillon?
Yes.
Okay. Let's do, what time is that? Let's do it at 7 then. And, you know, on that note, Mr. Gearbaugh, talking about belt tightening, I won't have to feed you all. So, 7 p.m., okay? In the event that we're running a little late, and it would be shocking if we were, just hang tight, but we do have a TIFA, LDFA, and EDC meeting in here at 6. And Mr. Gearbaugh and myself will be participating in those. Okay. Ladies, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Just to say thank you for
Okay.
your support and your partnership.
Obviously, this discussion will continue. I don't know if you're available next Monday, but if you'd be so kind to let Riley and Jill know that we'll be talking about the Main Street portion of our Main Street contribution next Monday at 7, we would appreciate that. And obviously, it's a public meeting. They're welcome to attend if that is their wish. Okay?
Thank you as well.
Thank you.
Appreciate the positive feedback and that people are appreciating all the volunteer efforts that are.
Great. Keep up the good work. We appreciate your leadership very much. Okay. We're going to proceed now to additional budget items. Ms. Bennett, do you have, and Ms. McDonough, yeah, please join us at the table. Do you have anything else you'd like to add at this time?
Well, I just, in reference to the budget or the other items that we talked about, because one of the costs that we wanted additional information on was the Rensselaer Farm furnace, which is $5,000, which would be above and beyond this line item, as well as you had some information about the council tablets, which would be again above and beyond what is, you know, we have $1,800 to work with. And you just, you know, we've just identified those areas in addition to additional amounts for Main Street, so.
Somebody else, or maybe, excuse me, perhaps it was multiple council members, Ms. Bennett, and I don't know if you want to go over this or Mr. Campbell. A number of my colleagues inquired about the temporary ice rink. That was you, okay? Do you want to go over that, the costs and potential cost savings if something were to change?
Well, I believe in your packet, we handed out some information prepared by Mr. Fordyce. I've got to get to that on my screen. Right? Did I not submit something?
Yes, you did. Yeah, Mr. Fordyce, why don't you join us? If you want to sit to the left of Ms. McDonough, that would be great.
So, Jeff, that spreadsheet, if you want to, and then I added the comments that you gave me on that.
All right. So this sheet totals up the number of hours of labor that we've put into the ice rink each of the years that it's been up, and some of the additional costs that the city has paid in the notes section there. In addition to those costs, there was the cost of the original ice rink, which was paid through donations, and there was another liner that was also paid through donations. So it's, you know, it's a liner every 2 years kind of thing. And in addition to the estimated $1,500 for a new liner this year, we do need some additional of the boards and the little protective plates that go inside the boards and the cushion thing on top of the boards. So there's, I think what is in the proposed budget right now is $5,000 for ice rink materials.
Mr. Parsons, I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Fordyce. Ms. Tahar, since you were the council member who brought this issue up, do you care to make an initial comment or ask questions regarding this issue?
Yes, thank you. So my concern when I asked the question was more about the DPW staff time that's expended on the ice rink, which in the 7 years represented here, we've only had how many where it's actually been a winter where it received the use that we had envisioned?
I think two. There were 2 winters of significant open time.
Okay. So as I look at the grand total of hours, I just did very rough arithmetic in my head. We're looking at, in each year, the equivalent of 2.5 to over 3.5 weeks of full-time work in hours at 40 hours a week, which given our discussion, our budget discussion and our staffing discussion about DPW, it seems to me for the return we've gotten, I mean, if the ice rink were perfect every year, it would be one thing, but it seems to me that the staff time could be far better used in other ways, and I would suggest that we could eliminate the ice rink altogether. And if we have $5,000 in the budget for the ice rink this year, aside from staff time, there's $5,000 that could be spent elsewhere. I won't say where.
Let me ask one question. Let me ask one question, then we'll work our way around the dais since Mayor Pro Tem Tahar brought this forward and is proposing that we zero this out in the proposed budget. If we were to eliminate funding and not install and maintain the ice rink in the winter of, what would that be, 2017, 2018, there's nothing to prevent us from coming back and doing it in subsequent years, is there?
We would need the new liner. But yeah,
Okay.
the materials we have on hand will store fine.
Okay. All right. All right, so Ms. Tahar has proposed that this item be zeroed out for the upcoming fiscal year. Ms. Tahar, or Ms. McClellan, excuse me, I'm going to start with you and then end with Councilmember Seo. Do you have any questions? And then I am looking for consensus on this issue.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with my fellow council member. I am kind of sad to see it go, but the fact that we haven't really had a winter in, I think, since my kids were in 3rd grade, and now they're in high school. So maybe not 3rd grade, but a while that we've gotten to use it. So I think for return on investment issues, I think the money would be better spent at Main Street. And, again, maybe going forward, if it decides it wants to come back as a Main Street project, maybe it'll come back as a Main Street project someday. I think I just added a work plan to this.
Ms. Dillon, please.
Everyone knows how much I love hockey and ice, so it breaks my heart to say it, but I don't think that it's a feasible thing for us. It's not getting the use that it deserves. What I would suggest is, since it is installed on Henny Field, which is school property, could the school assume it and let it become their budget item, and it become a school skating rink where they can put it wherever the heck they want and they maintain it? And then it's kind of off the city's books, and the city still gets the benefit of it without having to write a check. I don't know whether or not it's sort of that old adage of storing it is, it's like stuff you put up in your attic. Are you ever actually going to go back and take it out again, or are you just afraid to let go of it? My point being, if it has value, then maybe looking at selling it if we're not going to consider doing this.
It does seem that the ice rink idea comes back every 5 years.
Well, yes. I mean, in a perfect world, Saline would have an ice skating rink. That would be a year-round facility, in my world, that's what it would be. And I'm sure there are some people that like it. But, I mean, for those 6 people that have actually used it this year, I mean, is it really, I mean, we just can't justify the cost, and especially with, I mean, and it's not the cost of the actual rink, in my opinion, it's your labor, and in taking those workers away from doing other projects. I mean, you have such a short staff to begin with, and I just feel like their time could be spent in other ways.
Mr. Gearbox?
Yeah, I'm fine with not having it any longer, but I do think we should keep it because if it was paid for with donations, there's no reason why we wouldn't want to keep it. I think we need to cash in on those donations at this point.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Mitchell?
I risk angering my Canadian ancestors, but yeah, I think we need to do away with that.
I agree with my fellow council people. I think that outdoor facilities, not only in the winter but in the summer as well, are very iffy in the state of Michigan. And we've not seen sufficient use, I think, in the recent past to justify maintaining it. I certainly favor storing it for a few years at least to see what happens. And if beyond that, we don't see any reason to keep it and perhaps properly dispose of it.
I think you have consensus on that issue.
Just make that up. Let's go line by line, let's go.
Well, Mr. Hart, thank you for bringing that to our attention. Appreciate that. We want to transition now. We got less than 15 minutes. What's staff's recommendation? You want to hit council tablets, or do you think we need to do water and sewer rate study?
Well, we could certainly do the tablets all together if up there, because it's a dollar number, right? So we try to get closer to this final number. We could certainly talk about it at the special meeting on Monday. But one thing I just want to put out there, if I could, just because I was asked by a couple council members, I believe, after the last meeting, to look at the cost for the C-Click fix. And so, C-Click fix, that's the, on your phone, on your smartphone.
That's also included in your memo.
Yep. So $6,500 or so that we spend on that on an annual basis.
Let's do this unless there are objections. I think it was Mr. Gearbox who first, well, it was Mr. Gearbox who brought forward the council tablets. Is it okay if we take that up next Monday at 7, Mr. Gearbox?
That's fine.
Okay. Please.
Just very quickly, tagging on to that, what I would like to see with the council tablets is the benefit of, if we were to do a bring your own device, what our legal counsel suggests for privacy factors. I'd like to know what is.
It's open to FOIA, so. No, you don't want to do it, because we have that issue at the university, and that's the reason why we've
Just
recommended.
making sure, I know that, I knew what the answer was.
I told everybody,
just wanted to
we'll
make
pay you,
sure
we'll
that
give you a
it's
dollar
on the record.
stipend, but do not use your own personal device.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with Mr. Gearbox on that.
Yes. I knew what the answer was, I just wanted to make sure it was on the record. When people ask us why we're spending money on it.
Could we have a breakout of how much copying and printing and time it takes to do our paper and DP? Oh,
That was gonna
of
be my
course
question
she
as well.
does.
Yeah, we've done this before, but we can certainly, and we can bring that to the Monday meeting. Yep, we can do that.
I just want to make sure.
Okay, very good. We're going to transition to the last item that we discussed this evening at our work meeting is going to be the water and sewer study rates. Shouldn't be rate study. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Ms. Bennett, are you taking the lead on this?
I'm going to defer this to my partner in crime.
Okay. Ms. McDonough, the floor is yours.
Okay. Everybody's got the handout that came with the package. Okay. Basically what we're looking for is for an average homeowner, a 4.4% increase is what's being proposed in the FY18 budget. This is probably the least about $9.73 on a quarterly invoice for an average user. It's higher, say our largest user is American Soy, so on a monthly basis, they're looking at about $2,200 for their expenses, for their water increase. The big component, obviously, is all the projects that we have slated for water and sewer. Last year, we took the approach that the big ticket ones, we were going to spread over, 3 to 5 years, so these amounts are going to be in the budget going forward into like FY 20, 21. On top of that, we're going to be adding new projects. So it doesn't look like we're going to have any downtime. 18, yeah, I kind of smooth as much as I could out without interfering with the cash flow. So, yeah, I know we wanted to try to keep any increases down to a minimum. And last year, if you look at it, it was about 8.3% increase for an average household. Now it's 4.4% increase.
Do you have additional questions or comments, Mr. Hero?
Yeah, I just, I know we're trying to not do the impact, but looking at this in the future, so we're talking next year, 8%?
Well, next year, looking at FY 19, or not this, that's why we're trying to just not lock in for a 4-year term. We're just going to try to set them each year. Projects will fall off and be pushed into other years. Like we had stuff in the FY 17 budget that are not being paid for. They're not going to happen in FY 17, but it moved them into FY 18 because we've already captured money on that in the FY 17 rate study. So I believe something would happen in FY 19. There'll be projects that are going to get moved either out, or maybe the dollar amount will change, or we'll just drop off completely. So it's out there for you to look at what's going to happen in the future and have an idea that this is based on projects that are on books, in the plan right now.
But you could spread with a
And
5%.
you can spread
could be
it, right.
higher. Well, from my perspective, anything under 5%, because of all the projects we've got going on and all the money that we spent, even as a result of some of the previous projects, I think we need to be at least 5%. So, just to keep us up moving ahead.
Right, yeah, so we are under the 5% for an average residential, and actually just squeaking under 5% for emergency soil.
That's what we're about that. Thanks.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just want to make sure, you're saying 5% you're okay with, at least 5%, as opposed to underneath 5%.
Okay, well, I thought you understand, Lance, that we wanted to try to keep it from going over 5%.
Correct, but I just want to make sure, that's what Mr. Gearbox's position is. I could see there was a disconnect there, so that's why I wanted to just make sure we were on the same page.
No, and from my perspective, and I had before, I didn't have a problem pushing a little more, because I think we're going to get hit. We're not spreading, we're kind of spreading way too much into the future. I think we've got to be a little more clear on what we're transferring, but if you're comfortable with 5%, meeting our cash flow needs.
I think, yeah, for FY 18, yeah.
That's
So,
our biggest
right,
thing.
Whether going forward, we'll be able to smooth it out, because some of those projects are being pushed a couple of years now, so eventually we're going to get to them.
And knowing we may have another $1 million hit for the treatment, waste treatment and all that, I don't want to see all of a sudden having to plug in a 10 or 15% increase in 1 year.
Right, now the wastewater treatment plant for the odor control project, that will be an SRF loan, so it'll be debt service. So it's not going to be, we're not going to be hitting, yeah, and they're in that 19, 20, yeah, they're in those 2 years, the debt service on that.
Thanks.
Ms. Mitchell?
Nothing at this time.
Okay, Mr. Seal?
Why the big drop-off in 2020?
Well, because we probably don't have any real hard projects out there.
Yeah.
Yet.
Thank you.
Probably 19 will move to 20 and then 20 to 21, so it just.
I'm sorry, I stepped out to use the restroom. Did we start with you, Mr. Har? Oh, we start with Mr. Gearbaugh? Oh, okay.
Mr. Gearbox.
No. Take charge, I like that. So we'll move to Mr. Har, then end with Councilwoman Dillon.
So, in general, we hear that the country's infrastructure is old and liable to fail. So clearly, what happened on Michigan Avenue last summer deals with a lot of our old infrastructure. But is there any factor in here for the unexpected failure of some of the older parts of our water and sewer infrastructure?
In the budget out
did the 3-4 years, yes.
Okay.
So, yeah, they are being addressed, and they are in the CIP plan.
Okay.
You know, so that's, you know, some of the big hits in 19 and 20, that there are, yeah, catastrophic, I
Well-
believe, but just, you know, what's on
Yes.
Jeff's schedule.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Ms. Mitchell, or Ms. McClellan.
I don't think any questions. I mean, I don't see a big issue going from 4.4 to 5. I don't know if that makes any difference. I mean, is that really?
No.
I mean, it's done, I mean, either way, I don't,
Majority of our residents
it's not going to make that much difference, so I would say might as well. If it's going to be that minimal increase, and it will help going further forward.
Ms. Dillon?
So just for clarification, then 18, 19, and 20, those are just sort of plug-in numbers, correct?
They are projections.
Right.
They are taking the current FY18 budget for
Right.
water and sewer and kind of building out the operating expenses, you know, 2% or, you know, and then the projects that we have in the capital.
Right.
So some of them, the dollar ones, they're being sued over.
Right. So I guess that's what I'm getting at, is that some of the 18 will roll into 19, so that'll balance out those two numbers.
It could,
Could.
yes. Right.
Okay.
So that's why in the past, we always, Tetra Tech did the study for us, we adopted 4 years of rates. So those changes we weren't able to capitalize on.
Right.
Because we had locked into those. So this, we're doing during the budget process, so that anything that's falling off that isn't getting done, you know, it, on paper, in the budget, it's moving forward, but if I've already had it in last year's risk study, I'm not going to capture it again. But then any bigger project that come on board, I can factor in and smooth it out over a couple of years.
Okay. Thank you.
I just want to commend you for your work on this, Ms. McDonough, and, you know, my comments, well, they kind of take Mr. Gearbaugh's sentiments to a next level, which is, I'm fine bumping it up to 5%, and obviously we need to meet our needs, our obligations, but at the same time, I want, and I think I've articulated this in the past, I value consistency from the perspective of our utility users. And so if we can try as much as possible to have a rate that is consistent without a lot of dramatic ebbs and flows, I think that's really important. Okay? Anything else? All right, my friends, this was a good discussion. We'll continue speaking about many of these issues. Actually, most of them will address next Monday, again, 7 p.m. here in council chambers for a special work meeting to discuss our finances, in particular our general operating budget. At this time, we move on to public comments under the Open Meetings Act. Any citizen may come forward at this time, make comment or question to City Council. This public comment period will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested but not required to state his or her name and address for the record. Are there any citizen comments? There are none, then the chair would seek a motion to adjourn at 7:29 p.m.
So moved?
Moved by Mitchell, seconded by Tahar. All those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. We'll begin our regular meeting in 2 minutes.